modules, and you define who can do what by the roles. So your custom module is the same way. You can define a set of roles that are used specifically by your module. If you for example, if you want to use the DNN blog module, I think it's got a set of roles that you have to. I think there's a module that no, it was I'm sorry, I'm thinking of. There's a Code Camp module, one that you can use for like registration in Code Camp. So you have to set up a set of roles, and then it uses the roles internally. So there's some README instructions that the module developer actually created. You have to create a set of roles that are named in a particular way, and then the module uses that role definitions. Now you can automate the.
Can you automate the role creation?
Yeah, you typically do that when your module first runs. There's an interface you can use to like set stuff like that up inside the portal. So so it runs one time the very first time the module comes up. Okay. So let me hop out of here and go back to here and just see what we missed. All right. So here's a data. This picture's been around forever, but it's the. I talked about the data access application block, the concrete data provider, then we talked to SQL Server, the abstract provider, the business object layer, and then the user controls layer. I should show this slide before I show the code probably. But anyway, so like I said, this is for reference. So module development, so container, okay. Tables and storage, so creating your database objects. Typically what I would do is use a tool like CodeSmith to generate your data layer. If you're doing it from scratch, you don't want to have to write use some sort of a relational object relational mapper to generate your code layer. You can use any one basically, to generate your database, I should say, database layer.
You have CodeSmith templates to do that?
Then there are CodeSmith templates for generating the code that goes into our data layers, the concrete and the abstract layers. And now you'll find when you go out there and you start searching for them that they were built for DNN version 3. But guess what? The architecture is the same, so those CodeSmith templates still work just fine. So even though they were built for DNN 3, they still work for DNN 5. So there's a lot of things you think about when you're doing module development. This probably really should be a half a day session, but there is a module development guide that comes with documentation. So data business logic layer, easiest starting point is to take an existing module and rename it. You can build from the starter kit, but it's a pain in the rear. Because you have to, like I said, the batteries are not included. Here's your portable, iPortable, so that the import export. You take a module and you can import and export the contents of it. That's done through this iPortable interface that you have to implement. If you want to participate in search on the portal, you implement the iSearchable. iHydratable we talked about a little bit for the business layer to avoid the reflection stuff. There's another one that's not listed here, which is called what's the one that does the startup?
I don't know the name of that one.
The very first one, I never remember it. I haven't actually ever implemented it. So your user controls, I just talked about the tables that are affected when you register your user controls. All user controls in .NET inherit from portal module base. In fact, the other thing I should probably say is a settings control will inherit from portal settings base. There's two separate classes that are available out there, and that gives you all the access to all the plumbing and all the data structure that goes along with it. iActionable is another interface you implement to create the drop-down menu items. So you localize all the strings that go into the menus, and you just call this iActionable interface. It's a couple of functions, edit URL and navigate URL, that you'll use to navigate between pages on your site. This stuff is all explained in the .NET module development guide that comes with the .NET documentation. And they do a pretty good job of talking through it there. There's a whole bunch of reusable core controls, URL, tracking, address, dual lists, you can drop things from one list to the other, label controls, user controls, all that stuff. And you can take existing applications, existing ASP.NET web apps, and you can convert them fairly easy to .NET modules by modifying the ASPX, making an ASCX, just kind of building the user controls around. And then the hardest part, though, is hooking your module or your application functionality up through the .NET data layer. Okay. Now you don't have to use .NET data architecture. You can use whatever data architecture you want in the back. If you're building private modules, modules for yourself. If you're building commercial modules, you'll always want to build through the .NET architecture. So that's something I started to talk about at the very beginning. You got to figure out what kind of module you're building. For the widest reach, you want to stick with Framework 2. You want to build against probably .NET 4.5 or 6, depending on, so that your module will install in the most number of portals out there. So if you build against .NET like 4.6, so that you can get the high-hydratable interface and AJAX, you can still install that module on a DNN5 system. The DLLs will work. If you build against DNN4, it'll run against DNN5. But if you build against DNN5, it will not run on DNN4. Right? So that's the nature of the .NET framework. If you use link in your modules, you got to use Framework 3.5 instead of Framework 2. Right? So you got to think about the reach of your module. If you're trying to make it available to the public, you want to stay with the lowest common denominator. You always want to build the data layer, use the data layer architecture that .NET provides, so that other people can build data providers for databases other than SQL Server, and so on. So I think I've got a few more slides here, and they kind of get into tips and tricks. Package modules. On the module deployment page, there's a package my file. Once you get all this stuff typed in, it'll create a DNN manifest file for you. So yeah, this is where I was going to go into deployment package and jump start. Then yeah, that's all. This is all part of. Okay, so this slide talks about using the starter kit. There's a whole bunch of steps you have to go through here to make it work. I wanted to get to the concepts. So this is all of the other kinds of things you're going to have to think about. What namespaces do you use? What portal data structures and methods you can call? How you do module settings? How you can cache data in IIS? Page navigation? Security? Using the core controls? All the localization stuff that we talked about briefly. You can use what they call client API in .NET, which is really AJAX. Now you can use jQuery. They fully support it. They actually announced it before Microsoft announced that they were going to support it. Talk about exceptions and logging, that's all built in. Inter-module communication is possible, so you build multi-module applications that can communicate with each other through an internal communication mechanism. Whole lots of stuff. I mean, this is why I call it an application development platform, because there's a huge amount of functionality in .NET that you can reuse. You don't have to build all that stuff yourself. We talked about a lot of that. Tips and tricks. Be familiar with the standard modules. You really want, just parrot what they do. That's how I learned. I read the standard modules. Look for examples of, core functions. Search your source code. Code generation tools. Object browser is your friend, big time in this thing, because this has got a deep and wide object model. There's lots of stuff out there, so you just browse through. Know the high-class library. It's kind of the base thing that you got to know about programming any kind of a system. So don't modify the DNN core. Only do it for critical bug fixes that are necessary now. Petition the core team to change the core, so hopefully it's available in the next version, like if you find security issues. Documents are there. More info. So that pretty much brings me to the end of it. Sometime I'd like to do like a half-day session. Actually, what we're going to do a fire starter session. I think it's going to be in April at the Microsoft office. So those of us who wrote the book, we're going to do I don't know if it's a half day or a full day. I think it's a full day, and each of us are going to have like a couple hours to talk through our parts of the book chapters. So watch for that on our blogs. You'll probably see it come out in the NSDN Flash that Haley sends out. If you're interested, it'll be a free thing in the Firestarter sometime. We're not really sure when DNN5 is going to release yet, so we didn't set the date out until April. Our book.
Well, why would you hold back to South Florida?
Well, we probably will do that too.
We can make a couple 2-hour sessions.
It was kind of interesting that back 3-4 years ago, there was a lot of DNN sessions at code camps, and then it seemed like nobody wanted to do sessions anymore. But I continued having people asking me, "Aren't you going to do more .NET Nuke?" So we started doing them again. Now we're having tracks again. So I think it's really has been a powerful product. I really enjoyed working with it.
On the release notes and the EULA on the V5 modules, if you take advantage of those properties, will that break and be going backwards?
I think it's just ignored by prior versions.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about that.
And Stan's book's coming out in February.
Yeah,
So
February.
look for it. You can already pre-order it on Amazon.
Thank you for coming.
How soon are you going to be out?